We are going to hear from John Matsuya about practical AI for content performance. John, here you go.
Well, thank you so much. Hello, Montclair. My name is John Matsuya, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the macro trends that we're seeing for your websites and hopefully giving you some ideas to think a little creatively about how to set up your site for success in 2025. So a little about me. My name is John Matsuya. I'm the Director of Content Performance and Analytics at Penske Media Corporation. I've been driving traffic there for 10 years. I also love web analytics, and I work on content, data analytics, SEO, and web marketing for about 15 years. I love technology, storytelling, and problem solving, so I'm sure we all have that in common. And that's Cooper. He is my friend. He's not mine, but he's my friend. So I get all the benefits of hanging out with the dog without any of the responsibility. The first things first, AI is a buzzword. It is it's the savior, it's doom, it's all of the above, right? I'm sure you've been on the range of all of the spectrum of what AI could be and what it can be. But my goal today is to empower you with some practical AI tools, strategies, and ideas, and utilizations, but keeping the idea of highlighting your unique skills and talents as a human, as a person. And I think that's going to be even more important if your competitors are publishing AI slop, if you are getting dinged on Google or on any ranking systems, or if you can't get into the LLMs. Right? So I got a couple key questions that I thought I would ask. How will AI search impact traffic to my website or to the brands that I'm working on? And how can I use AI for my website? And then I have a third, how do I optimize for AI? So first, if you look, what does ChatGPT remind you of, right? It's so clean, it's so beautiful. It reminds me of Google, right? When it first started, right? Before it started to tank all of our traffic. But you can't see here that we are looking at the difference between search versus reason, right? So Google search, right, retrieved information that humans wrote, that we all wrote, and it gave you a response, whether you gamed it as an SEO, whether you did the hard work and followed the best practice guidelines. Reasoning, what AI does, what ChatGPT or Perplexity can do, is just ingest all that data, analyze information based on pattern recognition and semantic relationships. So one thing to be aware of is artificial intelligence is not actually intelligent in and of itself. It is it's generating outputs based off of probabilities, right, and predictions. So it still needs to be fed a lot of information and a lot of data, and there might be some things that is unaccounted for, right, or exceptions or unicorns. AI search itself, I'm sure, how many of you here have used ChatGPT or Perplexity or AI today? Right, like, so like I think more and more people are going to be adopting it, and I think my wife is a professor, all of her students are using it, right? So this is something that's coming, right? Like if you are a young person, you're definitely already started, and we're all going to start to catch up, right? AI search may be an end in and of itself. So if you ask, is this mold under my carpet? How do I get rid of it, right? Like it's just going to tell you what to do, and does that create a zero-click search that does not go to your beautiful website that you have created? So we have to think through what is defensive, how do we protect our own sites, and how to also interact and communicate with AI. And so this is a very nuanced point, but as you all know, humans are extremely good at nuance, right? So one thing to know is Google is not going away. As of 2024, despite the steady rise of LLMs like ChatGPT and Perplexity, Google still has the largest share of the search market. And so traditional search still maintains its position as the biggest organic traffic driver to our channels and maybe your channels, right? The other channels being direct, social media, referrals, right? And we are also seeing how those are shifting and evolving during this time, right? However, there's a big transition that's happening, right? And this might be something akin to the death of a god, right? So if you've read Scott Galloway's book, The Four, he has this analogy: Google is God, Apple is sex, Facebook is love, and Amazon is consumption, right? And those are your big four, your FANG brands, right? So in the modern day, why is Google God? In the modern day, we Google to find answers, much like prayers, and we trust in the results that a higher intelligence is going to respond. Google answers everyone, despite your demographic, and sometimes it works in mysterious ways, as algorithm updates will let you know. So if Google was a god, AI is this new god, right, that's taking its place. I was in Mexico earlier this year, and I was touring through some of these churches, and I saw that the angels had wings on their heads. And I asked my guide, why don't they have their wings on their backs? Why do they have their wings on their heads? And the guide told me, this is syncretism, right? It is when two cultures fuse, right? When two religions are fusing to create a new one. And that's why a lot of you are gonna still get traffic from Google. You're still gonna get traffic from LLMs. And those are going to fuse together, and you're gonna have to find out how to work with both channels. Right? AI search will most likely become a future referral channel. It might be driving a lot less traffic because it's summarizing a lot of those answers for you instead of referring those users to your site. So that is one big thing that any site that depends on traffic is going to have to contend with, that we are contending with currently as well. When you think about the first position search, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I first started in SEO, if you got that first blue link, you were gonna get a 35% conversion rate, right? Like you had high visibility. That was like the best billboard in town, right? So what is the first position in AI search, right? And I think this is still evolving as well. Perplexity had cards on the top. This is ChatGPT from yesterday, right? So I searched what are the best things to do around Montclair State University campus, right? And if you highlight the first link, you're going to see a little tiny footnote to montclairusa.org, right? njUSA.org. So AI search models are still incentivized to provide highly reputable sources, right? So they're still going to pick websites that they can trust, right? Google has spoken many times about expertise, authority, right, experience, and trust, right? And so I believe that fact checkers, QA, making sure that your websites are very trustworthy and reputable is still going to be a signal of strength and a point of brand authority. And if anyone has ever read David Foster Wallace, right, Infinite Jest is a huge book, right, and it's got a ton of footnotes, right? And so are we living in a world where sites are potentially going to become footnotes, which are still interesting if you've read Infinite Jest? There's still chapters, right, of a footnote, right? But does that mean that for your site to win, do you have to have a clear voice, deep subject matter knowledge, and real value for readers just beyond giving a quick answer? I slow down because I talk fast and I want to empathize with my notator right here.
You heard that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One thing that I do want to remind you all, right, which I hope will be one part to empower you, is what AI can do really well and what AI does not do as well. So I have a rough list, right, and I'll give you a second to take a look at this, and I'll move my mouse up here. But here are some examples where the LLMs may excel and where it might have some deficiencies, or it might have some classifications that are a little bit more difficult for an LLM to work through. And you may agree with some of them, you may not agree with some of them, right? But currently these are some things where AI models really have a strength, and some where resilience can potentially allow us to build our traffic. You may agree. And this list is initially from Brittany Muller. If you don't know Brittany Muller, she is a great thinker in the AI space. Right? So if you haven't followed her, you can follow her on LinkedIn. So once we came up with this list of what LLMs are good at, our team spoke about how we could utilize the LLMs to our advantage. Right? So for example, if an LLM is good at language translation, are we going to be able to generate a larger audience for maybe a more broader international audience? Right? We're trying to figure out ways to integrate this AI into our workflow and provide value to your readers, right? there's some things like sentiment analysis, speech recognition, anything that has to do with pattern recognition, we find it to do really well. So when things are predictable, when you have a huge swath of data to feed it, right, you're going to be able to rely on your LLM a little bit more than when there may be some nuances and caveats. I'll show you some ways that publishers and websites are utilizing AI to accomplish some of these. Sentiment analysis. So the Washington Post recently has implemented an AI-generated summary of user comments, right? And if you are in the SEO space, you may have seen Reddit succeed very highly on search, right? Because a lot of the AI models were thinking through, how do we replicate people talking, right? How do we get actual firsthand experience? So one question is, if your site has a very active community, is that a reason to open up your comment section? Is that a reason to make sure that your community is feeling listened to and feeling heard, right? And then Washington Post took it one step further, where they are summarizing the comments, right? So if there's 1,160 comments, right, they are summarizing those and giving you a very brief look at what how people are responding to the overall site. And this could extend engagement on your website. It could allow users to read and interact. And if you've ever cooked something, right, sometimes when I cook and I go on a site, I like to read the comments to see if someone's like, oh, this needs a lot more spice, right? Or you know, I like to use this ingredient instead. I also picked this particular article about GLP-1s because this is also a new technology that's happening right now that's going to be pretty transformative and change lives. If you haven't read this article, the main message of the article is that even though there's a very small percentage of Americans who are taking these weight loss drugs, it's having a very large impact on the economy, right? So, you know, let's say you're not a AI utopian and you're not an AI apocalypto, right? And you're kind of in the middle. You think AI will do something, right? But even 7% of Americans taking these weight loss drugs, that's, I believe this article says that it's about $2 billion a shift in where people vacation, how they dress, what they choose to eat, what they choose for their hobbies. So even if a small percentage of folks decide to adopt AI or AI models in their day-to-day life, I think it's still going to have a very massive impact in our lives. Content summaries and questions and answerings, right? So I bet anyone can create something like this in your site yourself, right? Recently, Gannett and its affiliates use an AI-generated key point executive summary at the top of every single one of their articles. This, I believe, is an optional plugin that they created for their custom CMS that their writers can choose to deploy or not. And their head of digital optimization stated that this allows writers to get a gut check of whether the article is being properly represented to the writer. And also these bullet points can give some guiding posts to the search engines, to the crawlers, to see if you're answering the question right away, right, for search engine optimization. San Francisco Chronicle launched a small language model that they embedded inside. They have been covering Kamala Harris because she was part of that city's history for a very long time. So they created a small language model where you could ask questions and they would just retrieve information about her from their own archive, right? So I asked, what are Kamala's favorite restaurants in San Francisco? And they will crawl and look at their own archive to deliver some results. So there are things that you may be able to do with your proprietary information for your own readers and your own audience. This is a social media network called Letterboxd. It's about film. And I always love Letterboxd. I like to interact with it a lot, so I'm a power user. But one thing that I always was a little sad about was when I would watch a foreign film, like I'm Still Here is from Brazil, a lot of the reviews were in Portuguese. But now they created an AI-generated translator, so you could just click it and read reviews from people who this film is from their native language, right? So I thought that was really cool. And back at home, we started to, at PMC, we started to think through, okay, well, for some of our larger brands that have a very broad audience, are we able to maybe expand it even more, even though it might be shrinking on traditional search? Maybe there's a whole, audience that reads Hindi out there, right? Or there's a whole Spanish language audience that is up for grabs, right? If we're able to best serve our users and best serve our readers. Can I use AI to generate content for my websites? My answer is, will the content enhance your page's value to the reader, right? So would you be able to generate more value, or will your readers recognize it as something that is quickly created, or is it something that they will engage in and interact with? Here's what I believe we can do better than LLMs, right? And things like common sense, right? Handling very uncommon scenarios, right? Like the first person killed by a Waymo was a woman that was carrying a bunch of carts. And that was because the Waymo did not recognize up to this point that this was a person, right? So sometimes there's a very uncommon scenario that happens, right? And you may have planned for, like these are people, but you may not have planned for a person with 3 shopping carts, right? So there's exceptions like that. High-level strategy. So LLMs may offer you the most basic advice if it does not know the context of all of the strategy that you have tried previously, things that you have failed on, things that you have iterated on, and there's other things here as well. Math and counting is kind of a funny one. This is probably going to evolve very, very quickly. But when I do some data analysis, sometimes I double check the math. And I'm like, wait, am I wrong, or is the LLM wrong? And you have to test it, right? So once again, the human in the machine is definitely going to be someone who is checking in on the QA of the outputs that happen, right? Arthur C. Clarke, famous sci-fi writer, said any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I will say that AI is not magic. It is a tool, right? And it is based off of data and predictions. And sometimes it seems like magic because after it has examined so many photos of your skin, it can find out that it can identify that this is cancer, right? That's one big opportunity, right? But I would always encourage you to remain skeptical and critically think about the outputs that you are given, right? It could be very easy to just start to rely on this as a tool, but until you become more and more confident with what outputs you're receiving, do not fall into this trap that it is something that is more intelligent than you. It is still data. It's still part of a machine. Right, and I think sometimes you'll hear those stories about someone falling in love with an AI model, right? You've probably heard those. They're a little bit more sensational. But I think that's when people drop the skepticism and just start believing that this is, that it could do more than it is, right? So remain skeptical, think critically. The New York Times' Ezra Klein, and it's kind of a long quote, but I'll read it. On where he's a writer, he said, the things that are easy to automate in AI, which is like getting the AI to summarize the reading or getting AI to write the first draft of something, that's actually where all the intelligence happens in my view. I write the first draft. ChatGPT cannot write the first draft of my book. The first draft is effing hard to write. And it's often hard because it's completely wrong, but not because it's narrowly wrong. ChatGPT will never tell you that the problem with what you're trying to do is that you're trying to do the wrong thing. It'll never tell you, if you tell it to write a first draft, that that's the wrong direction for this draft. Some part of this you just have to know. And often the problem is you haven't done enough reporting or you haven't done enough research, and ChatGPT can't tell you that either, right? So LLMs have a bias towards confirmation, right? They want to tell you, like, yes, you're on the right track. You are on the right track, right? Like, so you do want to remain skeptical and remain critical. Common sense, right? So the LA Times have launched an AI tool called Insights, which provided an opposing position for opinion pieces. The AI tool received negative attention for creating a counterpoint to some pretty sensitive topics, right? And so it got a lot of backlash and it was taken down, right? So common sense, emotional intelligence, right? Those are some things that you still need a person inside the machine to make sure that it's not going to, give the opposite version of why disabled people can do anything, right? That's probably something that you don't want a counterpoint to. So now we'll get into some practical and ethical AI use cases. A couple ways that we use our LLMs back at our company is, first, we try to find more reliable sources. We do think that this is going to become a large marker of value and reliability with trust, right? So we sometimes ask Chat PMC, which is our own internal, to ask 10 more sources of authority to link to, right? So if we write a story, we'll say, hey, can you provide 10 more sources that are authoritative or that come from an EDU? That way you could cross-reference sites that are highly valuable or that are highly credible, and maybe we can interview some on-brand experts. Or we could look for unconventional but on-brand experts. Interrogating your own content. So this is from Sportico, right? It says, Dodgers test you can't have too much pitching as Ohtani tunes up. And my prompt was, what perspectives or opinions have I missed in my story's analysis? Can you provide 10 more angles on this story? Right? And in doing so, it comes up with some ideas like psychological aspects of returning from a pitching injury or fan reaction and expectation, right? So this is the idea generation portion of it, comparative analysis with other teams, right? And so then you could take that to your writers and ask them, here are some more strategies about this piece where we could build a cluster of articles around. And then AI for multimodal. So if you have a great piece of content on your site, you want it to be seen by as many people as you can. So we ask it to customize unique headlines for different social channels and different age demographics, right? So, your audience on LinkedIn is going to be very different from your audience on TikTok. It's going to be very different from your audience on Instagram. So you may want to more quickly cater your headlines and your descriptions on social to promote your post. One of the big key terms that I like about AI is that it will become more like a co-intelligence, right? Instead of an artificial intelligence, it will be like a calculator that you'll be using, right? Except it's much more powerful and it could cover many more different things. So I use AI every day in my workflow for data analysis, right? I will ask it for formulas that I've forgotten or that I don't use very often, or I'll ask for some custom fields for Looker or for Looker Studio when I'm going to be delivering some reports based off of traffic and numbers there. So I guess the million-dollar question for anyone who wants to still drive a lot of traffic to their sites is, how do I optimize my site for traffic, for AI? And so I asked ChatGPT, right? And they gave me a very, very familiar answer. High quality content, structured data, technical SEO, good UX, UI, and a good site organization, right? So none of these are new. All of these are familiar. All of these are the foundation of SEO best practices, and that is the layer that AI is built on, right? And Google has been foreshadowing this for a very long time, asking for authors and contact info, right? Looking for the human in the machine, right? What do you have your expertise in your subject matter? Do you have experience with the product? Do you have authority? Do you have trust from your audience? So creating great content and white hat best practices have been long-standing guidance. And as SEOs, we are in a unique position to have the foundation for the next evolution of search, from lexical to semantic, right? To having a co-intelligence in the palm of your hand. And so it will be going from checkers to 3D chess, as you have to not think about just the exact literal keyword that you may be trying to rank for, but a whole web of very important semantically related words and keywords to your prompt. A couple early strategies that we have been exploring. Optimizing is two-pronged, right? One is external, which we think is offense, and internal, one that is defense. External is building out our reputation in as many of these channels as possible. So this is where you want to go hand in glove with your marketing manager and understand what kinds of audiences that you want. And internal would be promoting and creating an experience on your site that's very resilient and that's more likely to induce a click. So if the community is interacting on your site, on their forums or on their message boards, right, like that's gonna have engagement up, and that's gonna create a more resilient audience. If you have assets like video or even ranking tools, right, like those are some things that we are exploring or have invested in just to make sure that we keep our audience on our site. Galleries, images are good as well. Other things include structured data, right? So be familiar with what kinds of structured data are new, which ones have been sunset. Inclusion in data sources, right? So make sure that your website is referred to in Wikidata, in Wikipedia, right? And other fields in your business brand verticals, primary sources. Protect and understand your brand voice. And I think that this is where you need to focus on trust. Does your audience and readers trust you? Don't break or abuse that trust. Taste, right? They're coming to you because you are an expert and that you have the taste and the subject matter. And then whatever your brand's unique value proposition is. Finally, track and follow your competitors' interactions with AI. Who is ranking, right? So I would test prompts and see, oh, people, us weekly, they're ranking for some of these terms that we are not. Why are they being cited in the AI sources, right? And then you can also check in on which of those pages are the ones that are ranking as well, right? And then fine tune your prompts. Play with a couple different versions of your prompts to see. So what is your site good at and what is it known for? What is your product good at? What is your product or service known for? And creating your community around your unique value proposition will keep your brand extremely resilient. So my top takeaways, this is a tremendous time of unpredictability, change, and opportunity for search, AI, and answers. It is built on a foundation of SEO and search. Brands should dig deeper into their own value propositions and what your audience wants. Embrace change. Things are going to change very quickly. I believe in the next 3 to 5 years in the longer version. And incorporate new learnings into your day-to-day work, right? So practice, fail, right? Share your knowledge with your team, and develop some journalistic website AI best practices and boundaries for you and your audience. At the end, I've got a couple resources. If you haven't already played around with ChatGPT or OpenAI's Perplexity, you have those that I think everyone should be playing around with. OpenAI does have a reference doc that I think is incredibly helpful. If you want a very small idea of how AI tools work or small language models work, using Notebook LM on Google, you can upload your own sources and you can just play against that. And then if you're in the publishing space, I gave you a couple of style guides and ethical conduct guides from USA Today and the Washington Post. Thank you, everyone. I thought that this was going to end at 11:30, so I'm at 11:28. So I want to thank Mike O'Terry for having me. I want to thank Caleb Mattis. I don't think he's in here, but I really appreciate you. And if you want to reach out, either on LinkedIn or my personal site, you are more than welcome to. We still have some time left, but I know everyone loves an early lunch, so I'll ask if you have any questions. I'm happy to share. And then I think we'll have some time to go to lunch a little bit more quickly. Yes, sir, in the back.
Can you share your slides somewhere?
Yes, I think I'll share them on my LinkedIn after, in a day or so.
Okay.
Yes?
I have two questions. First one, can you please define, I'm sorry, what does LLM stand for?
Oh, I'm sorry. LLM stands for Large Language Model, right? Or Large Language Machine Learning, right? So that is something like Google, where you have all of the information at your fingertips, right? A small language model might be something where you are just inputting your own information, your own data, right? So one is much larger and that is the thing that that makes it more powerful.
Can you recommend any, because I'm more on the content side, how would I find that training on, are there classes where I can take AI classes, or how would I find the, not the best, but, more applicable to myself?
Yeah, you're in publishing.
Yes.
So one resource that I think is really great is Brittany Muller. She has a Maven course, right? I took that with her and learned a lot about this field. I think that that's good for anyone. But for publishing, there are a couple specific ones for journalists. If you want to come talk to me after, I think I could find some online for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other thoughts or questions, concerns? Yes.
If I know that a lot of people like to use AI for translation, and from my experience and my knowledge, I've seen it do really, really great things for very similar languages. So if you're translating a procedural language that is subject, verb, object, English, Spanish, French to another similar one, it's really, really good. For contextual languages and translating between a subject, verb, object, and subject, object, verb language, it is not. It has real issues, and specifically I'm talking about, I've seen a lot of English-Korean translations are really not good, and my friend Yoko, who's a Japanese translator, often is given an AI piece to start from, and often she finds it unusable. So when you're using this, I think this really aligns with some of the things you're saying about keep your wits about you and keep things, make sure that you understand the limitations of it, because it's amazing when you look at it, if it's doing English to Spanish. There's a lot of things around it, and you may think that that will work for everything. My friends who speak Tamil also say that like a lot of times the English Tamil stuff is not that great.
Yeah.
So you have to be, not assume that everything will do it, and you do have to, yeah.
That's a beautiful case of having a subject matter expert involved, right? So you can, unknowingly maybe offend people or put out poor quality content if you're just blanket using AI as a translation without having it vetted or checked. I do think QA and having folks vet your work is going to become even more important, especially when it comes to revenue, right, or languages. I think that that there's two pieces that I consider involved in that. Who is putting in the input, right? So if you have a very homogeneous data set, then it's going to reflect that, right? So it's not going to be, you probably need more Japanese, Korean, Tamil languages sources that are going in there. So that's where Brittany Muller at Maven would say that she thinks that some of these language models should also include something like a nutritional facts that you have on your food, like where are you sourcing your data from, right? And that's another thing about remembering that this is not magic, that it is it's a tool, and when it recognizes things and it can pick up those patterns, then it's incredibly powerful. But for those strange use cases, you do need someone to be a deep subject matter expert. You do need someone vetting the outputs. But on the other hand, I do think that these things get better. They evolve over time very quickly. So, in 2 or 3 years, we might be talking about how great it is for this kind of translation. And, just as a personal use case, my family all lives in Japan, and I've never been able to communicate with them. But now I have an AI translator in there, and the Japanese is not great, but now I can talk to all my aunts and uncles, and I've never been able to interact with them real time like that, for positive and negative, right? You're in the family chat now, for better or for worse. I saw one other question over here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think most of the examples in your deck were ChatGPT. Do you use any other models? Do you find that they're better at some use cases than others? Kind of how do you cleanse that?
Yeah, ChatGPT we use often just because it is where we found a lot of our referral sources coming from, and it is also pretty popular, but we do use Perplexity, like Perplexity a lot for journalists, for citations, because they're a lot more upfront with where they're sourcing their material. I do like Claude, but Claude to me does seem like it's got a lot of practical application for coding, for art, right, for images. So I've seen that be a superior experience there, right? And then Gemini is Google's, right, which is feeding their AI overviews, right, part of what is depressing some of your traffic. Any other questions? All right, I love a long lunch. So enjoy the rest of Montclair WordCamp and have a great day.